Inside a St Augustine Beach hotel room, a gruesome scene was found. A man hit with a bottle, then stabbed more than 50 times. It's a case that has moved through different investigators over the last 3 decades. But was it a robbery or possibly a hate crime? Here's On Your Side's Katie Jeffries with tonight's Unsolved.
Richard Jackson's little sister says he was a trusting man, easygoing, never saw the harm in people, only the good. Which is why when his life ended so savagely, their family was shaken. But could modern technology bring his killer to justice? It is a complicated case with a detailed timeline, all centering around the morning of May 7, 1982. Richard Jackson was an employee at the cargo station near the corner of Emerson and Phillips Highway. He closed up around midnight on the morning of the 7th and went to his home at Hall's Trailer Park, but then left shortly after. According to investigative notes, he was seen alone at the Junction Bar in Jacksonville and left alone around 1:45 a.m. Then begins a 3-hour period where no one knows where he was or if he was with anyone. It isn't until 4:45 a.m. he checks into the Sheridan Inn Anastasia in St Augustine Beach with a man believed to be in his early 20s with shaggy brown hair. They are given a room, and 20 minutes later, there's a call.
The front desk receives a phone call from room 149, which is where Richard had checked into. And that phone call was somebody asking how to make an outgoing phone call.
The Bell South operator calls the hotel around 5:15, ready to help. But the switchboard sees the phone in the room is currently in use. At 7:30, a cab driver picks up the man with shaggy brown hair and takes him to Jacksonville, dropping him off along Beach Boulevard. But he notices something when the man went to pay.
The cab driver noticed there was he said something about a Barnett bag. Well, Barnett was the bank that Richard banked at.
It wasn't until just before 11 a.m. a maid found the gruesome scene in room 149 and Richard's body. He'd been hit with a bottle and stabbed more than 50 times. Detective Kurt Hannon believes Richard had met the man for sex and they went to the hotel, but was killed almost immediately.
Between when they checked in at 4:45 and got into the hotel room and when the call comes in at 5:05, I believe it happened sometime during that time frame.
It was also evident someone had tried to break into Richard's Camaro and he'd been robbed. There was a crucial piece of evidence left behind. A washcloth in the bathroom.
It's believed that the suspect, washed his hands or did something to clean himself up before he left the hotel room.
Something that in 1982 wasn't overly helpful, but today could be processed for DNA. With more than 150 pieces of evidence taken from the scene in 1982, he and other investigators at the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office are going through the evidence to see what else can be done. They've already established a partial profile.
And we're looking into the possibility of the family genetics and genealogy playing a role into that and maybe identify a relative of the suspect.
But around the same time frame, Detective Hannon says there were attacks on gay men occurring. So was this a hate crime or a robbery?
There's indications that both of them could have been motivations, but I don't want to rule either one of those out or say that that is specifically the one.
Why Richard? And who killed him? Those are the questions Detective Hannon wants to answer for Richard's family. His younger sister, Mary Ann Jackson, says her brother was so kind and trusting. When she heard he died, she first thought it must have been in a wreck.
They told me no, he didn't get in no wreck, that he had been murdered, and I just could not believe that. I just couldn't get over that. I never really thought that it would be this long. I sure didn't.
But the search for the killer isn't over yet. If anybody knew Richard in 1982 or spoke with detectives 37 years ago, Detective Hannon wants to hear from them again. As the saying goes, the devil is in the details.
There might be some detail that, was told before to another detective and might have been passed over, or they didn't hear it properly, or they didn't think it was applicable back then based on the knowledge they had back then. Well, like I said, things have changed now. That detail may be more important now.
If you know anything about the murder of Richard Jackson, contact the St. Johns County Sheriff's Office or Crime Stoppers. Katie Jeffries, First Coast News, On Your Side.